Welcome back. You're listening to 1360 WLBK, the station that cares about its community. We are producing a series about responding to trauma in our community. Your host is Citizen Mike, and we have in studio with us today Ilona Meagher, author of Moving a Nation to Care, student at Northern Illinois University, and we're talking about coping and dealing with the trauma in our environment. Before we took our break the last time, you said we're going to talk about depression. What do we need to know about depression, and how is it related to these events?
Well, we were talking about PTSD a lot, and that's where I've had my research. So I haven't really looked into depression per se, but it's certainly related. It's certainly a part of, you go through a traumatic event, and just in layman's terms, we all know that a difficult event, you might be a little bit depressed, and so what does it mean? You might have an inability to concentrate. Maybe you're not able to sleep well. Maybe you feel kind of like, I just don't want to get up. I'm not worth anybody caring about what I'm going through. Other people have suffered more than me. What's my problem? So you may have this kind of a cycle of just feeling like, you're out of...
It sounds kind of like you're talking about this avoiding thing, which is, I'm getting the feel for the withdrawal part, but you're also saying it's not just the withdrawal. You're also having these sad feelings and thoughts, feelings of being worthless or, helpless or those sorts of things. No kidding. And you might want to stay in bed. And
Sure. Other things, your sadness, misery, unhappiness at the situation. There are, the guilt, survivor guilt. Now, we all kind of have that, I think, those of us who were in the vicinity or are, for example, I had a veteran, a friend of mine. Now, I don't presume to believe what he said is appropriate or, but I had a veteran friend of mine call me on Thursday night and called me and said, "How are you doing?" And I talked with him, and he says, "Well, you're one of us now. You survived your IED."
Wow.
And so you have, you want to immediately say, "Oh no, not at all. I wasn't in the building. I responded to the people who came out and were really traumatized." So you feel kind of guilty that these experiences that you had following the event, that you don't have a right to have that.
Right.
You beat yourself up sometimes if you don't watch. I'm on top of it, so I'm okay. But if you don't watch out for yourself, you might think, I'm not worth caring about because I didn't get hurt.
Right. Yeah. So the idea is that you were here and exposed to this, but it's not the same as being in a tank serving in Iraq that explodes, and so you would say, no, it doesn't apply to me for this unique group. But, I think that's really helpful for people to understand with PTSD, is that you don't actually have to be there. You simply have
Correct.
to be exposed to it. And that does make you a member of this unfortunate group. And the other benefit, though, of that is I've heard people talk about being part of the brotherhood, meaning that you have the common experience. And if you understand that you have that experience and you can respond out of it, that's helpful. Now, that doesn't mean that everybody has the same experience, but it does mean that if you're having these kinds of feelings, that first off, it's okay to accept where you're at, and that if other people identify you as their comrade, then instead of feeling guilty about that, accept that, because that person's saying they can connect with you.
Correct.
Yeah.
And as far as with depression, a couple of ways of looking at it is that depression is basically a reaction to a loss. So a lot of us have lost, we've lost on many levels, our innocence.
Oh.
We've lost our security, feeling on campus or in our communities. We've lost a lot of things, and so that's part of it. Another part is that often people who are depressed, they are actually aggressive, but they're turning it inwardly. So when I was doing my research for my my book, that's what you see is that some people tend to react violently outwardly, so they might abuse their families. Other people turn it inward. And the end result, the end game, the big one, is suicide. That's a violent reaction to solve your problem.
But you're also saying that it's associated with loss as opposed to the an angry outburst targeting someone else, and that it's associated with feeling sad and not wanting to get out of the bed necessarily, having difficulty with thinking, and you may not want to eat, and it kind of goes on for a while. And so people,
you may not feel like you're good enough, or you're not worth eating. You're not worth taking care of.
So the key is to know that those are symptoms of depression.
Of depression. And there are also biochemical changes in your brain. That's why they have certain medications. So that's why we need to watch the depression. There are certain things that you can do to help yourself. And a lot of them are common sense type of activities. Get out and exercise. Get out in the sunshine. Even on a cold day, dress up warmly. Get out, get some fresh air. Don't cloister yourself off from the world. You're worth it. You're worth taking care of. You're worth being with. You're worth experiencing, the world and having relationships and communication with other people. Try to seek out activities with people. Go bowling, if it's cold and rainy and all that, or cold and snowy, whatever it is. As lame as that is, and we do things with people, play cards. These are very old-fashioned types of things, but social types of activities that get you around people increase your self-worth, and there's really no way to be depressed when you feel good about yourself.
You were talking about that in an earlier segment where you're saying access your social support, your friends, that sort of thing, your parents, your brothers and sisters. But this is, you're saying here, you could do that to listen and to talk, but you could also do it just to have fun, to take a break. So get yourself, if you're feeling down and depressed or having these symptoms, get yourself out with your friends and family. Do those things that used to feel good to you, and that can help.
Yes.
Awesome.
Yes. And so, the activities. And then another big thing is to really try to be on top of your thoughts. Work through your thoughts and really, really examine. We've all heard about this negative self-talk, right? Mm-hmm. And we all have it to a certain degree at certain times. When you've experienced loss, you may have that a little bit more. I don't think that the depression per se it's not going to be something that is an issue for everybody after this traumatic event. I think more of the symptoms are what we've been talking about in other segments. After a traumatic event, you are going to be a little bit sharper. You're going to be more on edge. I don't think you're necessarily, not all of us will have to deal with depression, but I think it's a good idea just to kind of take a look at it. And if you see that people are closing themselves off, sleeping more, not communicating, not coming out, try to help and extend your hand, offer them a little, a lifeline.
So the key here is to recognize the symptoms of depression. Not everyone's going to have them in response to this situation, but it's withdrawing from others, it's sleeping more, it's eating more, and those sorts of things. Or less.
Yeah.
And if you find yourself feeling these feelings of aggression, and they can be experienced as aggressive, then the key thing to do, I think you're saying working through, and we're talking earlier that part of that, the first step is to accept it, to understand that it's normal, and to be able to accept that and to move forward, and that it's okay.
And don't forget the professionals, because as great as your personal sounding board is, the professionals, there's no guilt when you go in to talk with them that you've talked about it too much, that you're taking up their time, that they don't really want to listen. That's their job. So they want to listen. They want to help you.
So it sounds like our first line of defense is to accept what we're responding to. Our second line of defense is to talk to our friends, families, neighbors, so on and so forth. And then the third line of defense is if that's not working and you still have symptoms that you have difficulty dealing with, we want you to call the local mental health providers here, and that includes the Ben Gordon Center at 756-4875, Family Service Agency at 758-8616, Kish Health Counseling Services at 748-8334, DeKalb Clinic at 758-8671. This is being brought to you by the station that cares about its community, 1360 WLBK.